introduction to remote sensing and open source software. Okay, so I guess, so to introduce me to the other people that have not met me before, okay? So first of all, I'm a Canadian professional engineer, and I started as a project engineer with a consulting firm, and I moved on to starting my own engineering. And then basically, I later on started a software development company. And this company basically focused on developing software on top of CAD systems like AutoCAD and MicroStation. And my company mainly focused on what we call AEC, or Architectural Engineering Construction and GIS software on top of CAD systems. And basically my software company, we have clients in over 50 countries in the world. And so some examples of our clients is how software was used to build the Hong Kong airport. And it was used on the Three Gorges Dam. And the Osrand Bridge, the island of Osrand Bridge. If you know the bridge, this is a bridge that connects Denmark to Sweden. And in the middle, basically the way the group designed the bridge is that they built a tunnel to an island, and then the bridge to connect to the land. Okay, and also our software was used for the digital cadastral mapping for my province of Alberta. And then the last 15 years I've been doing international consulting in Asia, America, and Africa. So, what is happening with my training, I think, reflects some of this experience. So, a lot of my perspective comes from my background. So, it's not just how would I describe it? It's not just academic experience or engineering experience, but a combination. So, coming from that perspective, in many of my experience, and some of you already have seen this, I would like to just do a little philosophy at this time. So, because I think, we're here because we want to improve ourselves, and we want to do something better, and we want to do something more. So, in order to do that, you have to realize that if you keep thinking the old way, you keep doing the same things, your results will always be the same. Nothing will change. So, I think some of you have already seen this, but I'd like to remind you about it. But for now here, I guess, and things don't change because we like to stay within our comfort zone. So it's very easy if, we know what we're doing, we do not have to expand outside our comfort zone, we can keep doing the same thing. So that means nothing changes. So if you want to improve, you want to do something better, you want to do a better job, you want to produce a better product, you have to aim outside your comfort zone. So you have to expand your horizon. If you don't, then it's like this. You'll one day say to somebody, I'm a good dog, but I wish I had time to make myself a great dog. So I guess the challenge to everyone here is that, I'd like to see you all become great dogs, not just good dogs. So this is a philosophy of my life, because I think, I'm always trying to do something new. I'm always outside my comfort zone. I do get into trouble. I make many mistakes. But I'm happy because I think I keep learning. So this is actually a talk I did yesterday with MR Pam. And we were talking about knowledge portal. And I think this is worth sharing with you because, one of the things, if you go way back in history, we used to pass, the old original tribes used to pass information and knowledge verbally, just by talking. And then later on, when they developed handwriting and characters, they would copy the books by hand. So when you did that, only very few people could get books because they had to be handwritten. So until about 1400, when the printing press was invented, now you could have many books printed very quickly. So that allowed dissemination of information through books. And really, from 1400 to almost the 1900s, that was only the source of knowledge, was books. Now, I make a point here, the scientific secretary is not here, but in Mongolia, okay, today, IGG is still publishing books. I just point that out. Thank you. Okay? Now, in about 1950, you started to have mainframe computers, and then in about 1970s, we had microcomputers. Okay? With the microcomputer, I think from 1970 on, basically, you see the curve in terms of technology and knowledge. Okay, so the first microcomputer that actually could compile complex programs was the IBM PC in 1986. It really allows us to do all the work we do now on microcomputers. Before you had to have a mini or a mainframe to do the work. So around 1990, we started to develop the World Wide Web. And really what happened is from the World Wide Web on, basically we're talking today, everything is, there's a mass amount of digital data because of the PC, microcomputer, and the World Wide Web. So I'll give you another kind of food for thought, okay? Eric Schmidt. So Eric Schmidt is the chairman of Google, or at least the holding company, Alphabet, that owns Google. He did a presentation in California recently, and this is what he said at the conference. Every 2 days, we create as much information as we did from the dawn of civilization to 2003. Every 2 days. So between today and tomorrow, there'll be 5 exabytes of data, 10 to the power of 18 bytes created in the world. So what's the point, you say to me? Okay, the point is, in Mongolia today, there's a number of things the government needs to do in Mongolia. They make sure everyone has really good internet connection, high speed. And the second thing is, the problem with all that data is that about 80 to 90% of it is in English. You also need to now, I think, put some effort into language, English language, unfortunately. So English is important, high-speed internet is important if you want to reach the global village and get the information from the global village. So just to give you the background picture of our project, come back to our project. So our project is going to try to do certain things to help in this area. This is the assessment and merit. Okay, we are working on a knowledge portal. And we are hoping to take information like this course, our training, other training, and put it on a portal in Mongolia. And we hope to translate some of the information so that the Mongolians that do not have a really good knowledge of English can still access the information. So that's the parallel. So some of the people here, I suspect you'll be the future intelligence, contributors to the Mongolian technologies. Okay? And so one of the objectives here is that there is a real need. I think there's a number of things that is disadvantage in Mongolia because I think, I'll be very frank, okay? I don't want to insult people, but in Mongolia, many people hide information or keep information to themselves. So that's actually quite selfish. If you look in the context of this, it doesn't make sense. So it is very short-sighted, and we need to change the thinking. And so it'll be up to the people like yourselves to start to talk and say, look, we need to have access. We need not just books, not just atlases. We want digital information, and we want it on a portal, and we want to be able to access it for Mongolia. So you have to talk to your managers, your leaders, your government people, but it's the world, and you look at Mongolia, we need to catch up. What are we here to do? Okay, so other than the philosophy and everything else, and want to be a great dog, this is the workshop objectives. So we're trying to get a good understanding about remote sensing. I know some of you out here might know more about remote sensing than me. So I'll give you an opportunity to share your knowledge with the people here as well. We will be happy for you to discuss your case studies, the work you're doing, what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what you like to get out of remote sensing. And then we're going to learn about FOSS4G tools that we will be using. And FOSS4G stands for Free and Open Source Software for Geospatial. Until now, I think in Mongolia, they are the Mongolian version of ArcGIS, Mongolian version of Oracle, Mongolian version of other software that are not licensed. So what I'm trying to say is that there is actually now open source software developed by the global community that is available for free to use. And so you don't need to use pirated software. I would like to see, there's possibility of using open source software to do the work in remote sensing. So the other part also is that where and how can we get data for remote sensing? So if you want to do a project, where and how can we get the data? You can always buy data, but if we don't have money to buy data, where can we get data? And I find that in Mongolia, it's quite hard, even when we know somebody has data and we try to get it from the people here, we cannot really get it to share. So, again, that's a mindset thing, and I think we need to change that, but I don't know how long it'll take. But anyway, so in the case that we cannot get it, we need to do a job. Where can we find some data? We'll look at some potential sources. And then finally, I think what we want to do here is to actually have you use some of the software as part of the training. So this is roughly the plan that I've laid out for 3 days. Okay, so based on what we want to do, so right now we're doing an introduction and orientation. We'll talk a little bit about remote sensing. We'll look at FOSS4G and OSGeo. So what they are, where they are. If you have internet, you can download it yourself. Some of the things. And then we'll talk about basic geodesy and geo-registration or geo-referencing. So this is the day 1. So in day 2, I'm going to talk about some case studies, some of the projects I worked on where I use remote sensing, and I would like to also have some of you share the work that you're doing with respect to remote sensing. Then we will look at remote sensing, raster images, where we can get remote sensing. And actually, I will talk about remote sensing, the theory as well, over the second. And then on day 3, Monday, we will introduce multi-spec. And then introducing to QGIS. I don't know about graphs, it's quite complex. I'll think about it on the weekend, look at how much I can cover. But I have actually introduced 3 software packages that I think is good for remote sensing. One is multi-spec. Second one is QGIS with graphs. The third one is Sega. Those are available for you to use and look at in your requirement in the work, but I think I'm starting with the one that I use the most is multi-spec in my work because it's not as intensive as some of the researchers would use remote sensing for. So between 3 and 4, basically, we'll be using multi-spec and some QGIS work to do a project with remote sensing. This is like 4 days, very short time. Principle is to have an understanding of what is remote sensing, what are the tools, and how do we use it a little bit, okay? The rest of the time, it's up to you to expand your own comfort zone. Yeah? Housekeeping, this is what we say, okay? We try to ensure that all the data software is free for you to use. So at the end of this, I will give you the PowerPoint, and I think the project people at Sesman will translate some of this into Mongolian, right? We'll make it available to you. Feel free to use it, show it, share it, okay? We are open and transparent. We're trying to help you do the same thing, yeah? And if you think it's useful for your organization to take this work or the presentation material and show it to your colleagues in your organization or institution, do it, please. So just give the Canadians and Sesman a little credit and we'll be very happy. So, we'll start. What is remote sensing? So, remote sensing is the science of obtaining information about objects or areas from a distance. typically from an aircraft or satellite. So that's remote sensing. But what you do with that information is the other part of remote sensing. So first of all, let's deal with how do we remotely sense data. So the people that were in the earlier drone course have seen this slide before. So in the old days, I guess back in 1862, some gentleman used a hot air balloon to go up in the air and take a picture. That's remote sensing. And then in about 1911, somebody in Michigan, the United States, used a kite with a camera on a kite. And then in the First World War, I guess the reconnaissance biplanes, and the First World War, propeller planes, they were also using it in the military pictures. So in World War II, we had the mosquito bomb. So the people that did the UAV drone course remember my talk about this. So at the end of the Second World War, the Canadian government had a surplus of mosquito bombers. They didn't need to use it in the war anymore. So the Canadian government retrofitted the bombers to be for aerial photography. So they put cameras inside the bomber. Instead of the bomb bay, they have a camera. And the government of Canada used this to generate topographic maps of the entire country. So this is around 1950, 1960s. So we flew all of Canada, each country, using mosquito bombers, retrofitted with cameras. So we generated all these 1 to 50,000 topographic maps in Canada. Came from that program started with after the war. So that's a little bit at the beginning. And then we move on to the fun part. Okay? So the U-2 Dragon Lady. So the Cold War with Russia and Americans. One of the things, there are many things I don't like about America, USA. Okay? But some of the things I do appreciate from the United States is because of their military development, a lot of technology we're using today comes from the U.S. military. Okay? And one of the nice things, whether you're like Donald Trump or not, or the American political system, the Americans have been very open to share a lot of the data with the world. So in the 50s and 60s, you had the Cold War with Russia. And the Cold War generated a lot of technology that we're using today. So the U-2 spy plane was one of the early remote sensing vehicles that covered a lot of territory over Russia in particular. So this plane is called the Dragon Lady, and I think the history of the U-2. The pilots didn't like the U-2 because you had to be in the plane for about 8 hours, 9 hours flying, and it was very cold, like Mongolia. So they used it up to about 1980, and I don't know if they're still using it, but at least for sure until 1980 they were using it. So there's some of the information of the U-2. This is a Russian airfield. This is a remotely sensed image from the U-2 flight. Okay, and because the Russians shot down a U-2 in Russia, I don't know, in the 60s. But the U-2s worked until the Russian had anti-aircraft missiles that were flying high enough to hit the U-2 planes. So then the Americans did not use it over Russia anymore. So they started to use satellite, the Corona satellite. Again, here's a picture of an airfield. You can see the airfield. So the Corona was one of the early satellites. Here's another picture of the Corona image of the airfield. But the Corona technology at the time, they were not able to actually send it down wire electronically from the satellite. They had to actually have film. So inside the Corona satellite, there's actually a film canister, camera, and other parts that they ejected from the satellite. And then a plane would catch the film before it hits the water. So naturally, the remotely sensed data from the Corona satellite is very expensive because eventually it run out of film. and there's no way to reload the film. So then they had to figure out a different run. They came up with the Keyhole project. That's the next remote sensing satellite called the KH. Yeah, so the Keyhole satellite was the first one that would actually transmit by radio waves the imagery back to Earth. So this is an image. It happened to be around the time of the beginning of the Afghan War, the Russian-Afghan War. So the Keyhole satellite was able to take images of what the Russians were doing in Afghanistan. Okay, so the Americans could spy on the Russians. Right? So with the technology developed by the military, the other part, the good guys, the other parts started to say, well, we're using technology for Earth observation. So we take what was developed by the military and we apply it now to Earth observation. So I would say that without the military use of remote sensing, we would not have got the Earth observation benefit from remote sensing. So the politicians will spend money for war, but not money for peace. So the initial Landsat had 4 bands, a number of limited bands. Okay, these are multi-spectral bands, MSS bands. And then that results in basically you can translate this each band into 256 numbers, 0 to 256 for each band. So this is the kind of the digital results of the information from the Landsat. We will go into this in more detail later. This is just for example. So later on, Landsat 4 have much more bands, including false color and so on. Yeah? So it's hard to see, but you have basically some bands. You have the wavelength 0.45 to 0.52, blue-green. Okay, then you have green, red, near infrared, middle infrared, thermal infrared, and another mid-infrared. And over here is the resolution of all Landsat resolution is 30 meters. And we will go into these a little bit more later. Yeah. In terms of other remote sensing satellites, so this is kind of the history of the satellites. So Landsat 7 went from 1999 to 2012. And then Landsat 8, 2013 onwards. Okay, then they started having level 1 terrain corrected. So terrain corrected means from about Landsat 8 on we have ortho-rectified images. Okay, and we can talk a little bit more about ortho-rectification later on, but it uses the SRTM data from the shuttle space program. So with the space shuttle program, the SRTM obtain elevation on the Earth every 90 meters, so the whole between 60 degrees and 60 degrees north and 60 degrees south. The space shuttle flew with radar obtain elevation every 90 meters. And they use that terrain to correct the image, so it's called terrain corrected or auto-rectified. Okay? And they actually enhanced it with the panchromatic band 8. Band 8 on the Landsat is 15 megapixel, black and white. Okay, and they enhanced the other frequencies of the 15. But anyways, regardless, this is also made available in Geodesy, in UTM, so registered. So the people that took the first course will know Geodesy. So we can go into that later. So then you have Quick Bird, which is around 2.4 meters pixel, and then Spot around 10 meters, and then NOAA, which is 1 kilometer. So I believe that most people here have used, and the Institute has used a lot of NOAA MODIS stuff, the large pixels and down to small pixels. For our drone that we use, we have 5 centimeter pixels. A little bit about FOSS4G and OSGeo. So OSGeo is a foundation, open source for geospatial foundation. So this is a group that was formed around 2006 okay? Or that's Windows, around 2004. So actually, open source as a thinking, for the world community, so it started around 2000. So open source people got together and wanted to share the experience and build a bigger global network. That started in about 2000. And around 2004, the people looking at geospatial wanted to create their own group. And they formed their own group in 2004 called FOSS4G. And then the FOSS4W for Windows, okay, FOSS4G for Windows, in 2006 we developed the foundation. The goal of the foundations here for Windows or Linux is to promote collaborative development of geospatial technologies, support broader FOSS geospatial community, and then look at software development and open access to government-produced geospatial data. So they're also an advocacy group to governments around the world to share geospatial data. So this is one of the products that we would recommend that you use. And I actually would like some feedback from people that have used it in their daily work, how they find it. Because I've been using QGIS now for about 4 or 5 years, and I have had pretty good success on my project. Okay? And I think I've stopped using ArcGIS now in version 9. I've stopped upgrading. Okay, the other one that we're talking about is multi-spec. Now, multi-spec is a pretty nice product developed by the University of Purdue in the United States. Now, the Purdue, I guess they got funding, the university got funding from the Purdue Research Foundation. And you notice down below there, they say they have an online version now available. Okay, just for context, one of the problems I have, and people in the US, Canada, Europe has, is that the cloud, or the online technology, is moving very fast for us. Part of the problem is that, well, not the problem, but because the infrastructure is quite good in the West, and most of us have pretty good high-speed internet, we rely more and more on cloud-based technology. So in a way, we're actually going backwards in time, right? Because if you saw that curve I showed you earlier on, we're really going back to the time of the mainframes. Because in the days of the mainframes is when you had the mainframe computer with terminals. Everybody's on terminal, what we call thin client. And so really, it's back to your browser-based applications is what is getting more and more common back home. But that requires a fairly good internet infrastructure. So people that back home use this online comes here will have trouble running their software because internet's too slow. So I mean, there's different thinking. I think when I went to Africa, you'll see some examples of my story about Africa in my case study. In Africa, I was using actually the internet was available only by satellite. So it's slow enough that for me to get a Windows patch, I have to start the download when I go to bed, and when I wake up, the download is finished. So basically only almost for text, no downloading and uploading. Easy. So anyway, this is something that's happening more and more, okay, with Chromebooks in the schools in Canada. So students now using Chromebooks and it's thin client relying on the web. So Google Chrome, basically the PC just has all the Android applications and it's web-based. So, but definitely another one of those that relies on the internet and servers. So Sega. Now, Sega is a very interesting product. It is actually a very good raster processing product. It's much more complicated to use than multi-spec. but it also is much more powerful. So a lot of this is the NOAA people and stuff like that to do their processing, whether it's ocean temperatures, coastal morphology and stuff like that. So I'll show a bit of an example about this, but I again won't go into it too much detail. I'm teach it properly, I have to learn it, and I don't have time to learn it, but I can show you what it is. Geodesy, say, well, I'm doing remote sensing, why do we want to talk about geodesy? Geodesy is important because, you've seen this slide earlier in my other talk, yeah? So, when the architect lays the foundation stone and the crooked man at the wall, we're going to crook it till the head's ahead. In other words, if we don't start with a proper base, your house will be falling over. Yeah? But essentially, what I'm saying here now is that when we work with remote sensing, we're looking at images, right? And we're trying to basically take information from the image, and we want to create a layer of information. Okay? So, let's say we want to go from raster to vector. If you have a vector layer, let's say we have a map of a forested area, and we want to get mark the boundaries of the forested area. Okay, and we want to take the map of the forested area and want to put it on another map that somebody else has done. Without a good understanding of geodesy and what you're doing, then so you're trying to mix the two maps, they do not fit well. And if now you take layers from different people and you combine them, even if it's the same place, nothing fits. You have a problem. If you say, well, I'm just a remote sensing expert, I don't need to learn about geodesy, it's not correct. Okay? You have to understand geodesy if you're going to share your data. So you don't need geodesy if you're going to take your information and put it in the drawer. But if you're going to share it with other people or you need other people's information, then you need to understand geodesy. So why do we need geodesy? Okay? Now, part of the thing is, when we do a map, the map is a flat map. But unfortunately, our world is not flat. And so we have the issue of taking a curved world to create a flat map. So we need to know what we're doing, otherwise things don't fit together. So just some terminology here. The people in the old days, the sailors, okay, why do we have longitude and latitude? So longitude and latitude came to be because of travelers. And basically the sailors that sailed from Europe to Asia needed maps, and they needed to know where navigation, where they are. Okay? And they decided, well, the world is sort of round, sphere, so let's divide it into degrees. So, and they use the equator as 0 degrees. Going north and south, we have lines of degrees called latitude. And we go from 0 to 90 degrees. Okay? So latitude 0 to 90 degrees north, 0 to 90 degrees south. Okay? Going east and west, we have longitude. And longitude goes from 0 to 180 degrees. So you're going from England to America, you're going west, it's negative, 0 to minus 180 degrees. You have two readings then, latitude and longitude. Okay? So degrees. But it means really some issues. If you forget the negative, or you're going west, you have a problem. So there's really longitude 95, latitude 36, okay? There's really 4 places that you have that point if you don't give direction. And you say north and south, and it narrows it down to 1. So the direction is important for this, okay? So the sailors were able to use the stars to determine what latitude they're in, and they use the clock to determine these things, okay? Because they can't tell from the sky, east or west. So time, as in, they know from the sun, they know when it's noon, where they are sailing, okay? Because the sun's shadow will be shortest at noon, okay? But at noon, where they are, they need to know where noon is at Greenwich, at the prime meridian, to know how far they've gone. So just for history, every sailing boat in England, they had a big competition to see which watchmaker could make the most accurate chronometer. Because the Navy needed the chronometer, okay? An accurate watch, clock on the boat so that they could know where they were around the world. So again, kind of military, because this was the naval powers of Europe at the time, the military now helped us get very good watches in the old days. Now leaping forward, the issue of a clock is actually quite critical. Ironically, our GNSS GPS information, the satellites have an atomic clock. It's critical. Time is so critical for everything we do. So if we leap forward, the atomic clock and the GPS, GNSS satellites, the GONASS and GPS satellites have basically an atomic clock. Because today when we use the GPS to locate ourselves, actually it is also the clock that helps determine how accurately we are located. So in the old days, when they were sailors using longitude and latitude, they needed a chronometer to know where Greenwich, always set to the prime meridian time. And then when they were sailing, they used the sun to determine noon, where they were sailing, the boat was, the ship, and they compare the difference, they know how far they've sailed, east or west. So the ship sets, this time is set here. The boat always has the time, GMT time. Okay, so we took our spherical type world and we put a square map. You see what happens? Actually, I discovered this is an incorrect title. It says unprojected. It is actually projected. It's a Mercator projection. So Peter Dana is put a wrong title. This is Mercator. So we took the world and made it flat. So we can just keep in mind that this is 0, east and west, east and west. Okay. So Mongolia is around between 90 and 120 degrees. It's probably between 40 and 50 degrees north, in latitude. We'll come back to the Earth again. Our Earth is, if it was a sphere, which means perfectly round, we will have very little problems. But the Earth is not a sphere. So it is flattened at the poles, so it has a fatter belly. So because it's not a sphere, it actually makes life a little more complicated. So it means that the center of the Earth is an interesting, you need to find the center of the Earth. Okay, and the center of something that is not perfectly spherical is a little bit complicated. So the people at Must, right, the University, the Geodesy section there, or whatever it is, the geodesists, okay, will now say, well, we can fit an ellipsoid maybe to the Earth. So an ellipsoid is basically a distorted sphere that is mathematically even. So the geodesists that study geodesy can use the ellipsoid to project the ellipsoid onto a flat plane. The datum is really the center part of the ellipsoid. Okay? So we try to take the ellipsoid, we take Earth, and we try to, the geodesists will try to fit the ellipsoid to the Earth, usually using North Pole and South Pole as the axis. And that's what we normally call a datum. So somewhere along this axis is where we say the center. Well, the datum is the center of the ellipsoid, okay, which runs along the north-south axis. So in a way, I think the Gauss figure is what the Russians use. So they fitted that ellipsoid for Russia, and Mongolia is close to Russia, so Mongolia says, okay, the Gauss figure is okay for us too. Okay, and so just keep in mind, because all the different datums, we have issues again with coordinates later. This gives you an example of the different types of projection. Projection, cylindrical projection. This is the transverse Mercator. This is conic projection. So there are many, many projections for the ellipsoid to go from flat, curved to flat. We come to UTM projection. We have the military to thank for UTM. So I think U.S. Army Corps of Engineers wanted to prepare military maps for different places in the world where USA had interest. And so they decided, well, how do we make maps that we can use that will fit together, that is relatively accurate, so that when our tanks go, they go the right distance, okay, etc. Because you need flat maps because you cannot measure, well, let me explain two things. You cannot measure area with lat long, with degrees. You cannot measure distance with degrees. Yeah? I mean, at the equator, you can say I can go, 5 degrees by 10 degrees, that's 50 square degrees, right? But if we go up to the North Pole, 50 square degrees is very small. Okay, in terms of length, if I was walking straight north, 5 degrees at the equator, and I walk 5 degrees at the pole, it's the same distance, only if I'm walking straight north and south. Okay, so I mean, we can't use latitude and longitude to measure area. Because if you tell somebody, from Ulaanbaatar to Erdenet is so many degrees, it doesn't make sense, right? Anyway, so that's the reason why we need maps, flat maps. Okay, given the problem with this, the U.S. military says, okay, why don't we use the transverse Mercator projection? But we know that as we move out left, east, and west, if we go too far, then we get distortions. The geodesists at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers said, okay, we can probably live with about 6 degrees. We made the strip 6 degrees. And then they have a numbering system. So the numbering system is, so this is from 0 to 180. So there is 66-degree UTM zones. So when you take the Mercator projection, you can see this is the Mercator projection. You took the Earth and you flattened the whole Earth out. Okay? You can see how big Canada is. Okay? It makes Canada and Russia look really good. But our area is not that area, it's much smaller than that. This is not UTM map, this is just to display the grid. So we're using basically a Mercator projection. In the real terms, when we do the UTM zones, these things go smaller. So they're little triangles, right? Actually curves, like a banana. But this is just to show you the zone using a Mercator projection to show you what the UTM zones look like. So based on this, then based on the international convention that they've set, then Mongolia sits between 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, right? So from 44 to 50. This is some more explanation of UTM. So the Mercator projection, this is the projection that gave us the other map. Okay, the previous map. So the UTM is a transverse Mercator. So we take the world, we rotate the cylinder, just transversely, horizontally. So as I said, that instead of being distorted, and you see at the poles it gets really distorted. This is the distortion. So with the UTM, it actually comes in. So with UTM, Canada and Russia is smaller. Okay? Because the UTM zone decreases to 0 at 84 degrees north. It's only good till 84 degrees north. So when people do the map of the North and South Pole, they use a different projection. So just a note, okay? So what it means is, if I give you a UTM XY coordinate, I don't tell you what zone it is. There's potentially 60 places on the Earth that it could represent. So if somebody just said, yeah, this is the UTM coordinate, 100,000 by 50,000, there's 60 places it could be. You probably will have the same XY in zone 1, zone 2, zone 3. So if it's UTM, you have to say what zone. Okay? Because when I first ran into this many years ago, I got the map. With UTM, I combined them because they cover 2 zones, and I expected to have a map, but they all mixed up together. Okay? So that was a problem because they have similar coordinates. Okay, so those are the days when you didn't have GIS, and we just had UTM coordinates and CAD systems, so they all line up on top of each other. So this is why we need to understand how to separate. Okay? And you'll notice that on the edges, these zones overlap. For example, my province of Alberta, we sit in 2 zones. Notice the 6 zones, we've got 2 zones. So the province, when they want to make a map of one in transverse Mercator, has one set of coordinates for all the province digitally. They create what they call a 10 TM. So this is another description of the central meridian. Okay, so the central meridian is just a line, and in UTM it is fixed. That's the only difference. It's standard. So with UTM, for every zone, there is a fixed central meridian. Zoning. Okay, because every zone has a start and end point in degrees, and the middle is the central meridian. So once they tell you the zone, you should be able to calculate the central meridian, the left and right limits of the zone. In a Cartesian flat map, so within this zone, right, the central meridian actually is 0. Alright, so now it comes to 3 TM. Okay? So fun and games. So in Alberta, again, this is an example. The cities and towns in Alberta decided that, UTM is okay, but we want something more accurate for our city. So the city of Edmonton, Calgary, Red Deer, whatever, they say, we want our own 3 TM. Okay, so we just go east-west 3 degrees. They make a big map of the city, they take a central meridian, and they calculate coordinates based on 3 TM. Okay, so it's just, when we get maps and we get digital files and we get coordinates, we need to know what created those numbers, otherwise we are really confused. So this is why I'm emphasizing that it's sometimes it's good to have paper maps, but we want to go to digital. But if we go to digital, we realize that there are many numbers and coordinates for maps, and they come from different sources. And you, as a geographer or practitioner in geodesy or geomatics, you need to know what we call a metadata. Okay? Whereas, if I get a map from the city of Edmonton and the city of Calgary, they don't tell me it's 3 TM. I go and kind of put it on a map with UTM, but it doesn't fit. Those of you that met Gary from the last workshop, he works in Alberta in many municipalities, and he's run into this problem where the people have decided the GIS, they want to use a different projection system, 3 TM. They don't really know why. They mix up maps, and so the data is all messy. Okay, so much for the UTM, 3 TM. It's all transverse Mercator. We need to understand what the central meridian is. There is a standard for UTM for the zone. We know exactly if somebody says it's UTM, it is a standard. And therefore, if you know the zone, you can resolve the information. But if you get a map from somebody that has modified the UTM to a custom transverse Mercator, and they don't tell you what they've done, then you have a problem with actually using that data. And so it is actually, in many cases, a lot of the problems we run into is when the people, I guess as my old partner used to say, just know enough to be dangerous, and they make changes without knowing what they're doing. That get into a lot of trouble. So we've had this issue with municipalities and local government in Canada, and we actually I've run into this with national mapping agencies in some countries. Okay, so we'll move along here. So GNS, now coming back, we sort of earlier talked about datum, right? We talked about the Earth not being a perfect sphere. We talked about geodesists using the ellipsoid to simulate what the Earth, ideal Earth shape would be. So now we come to GNSS satellites, GLONASS and GPS, and how that affects what we're doing today. So GNSS, well, okay, we can use GPS. GPS today, GPS used to mean only the American network of satellites. We now have GLONASS, okay, that's been added. We have other constellations from other countries, so it's called GNSS, is the new term for GPS. Okay, for those that are not familiar. Well, let's use the term GPS just so everybody's familiar with it, but when I say GPS, I mean GLONASS and GPS. So with the satellites, okay, basically satellites rotate around the center of the Earth. And by center of Earth, I don't mean a datum. I mean the gravitational center of the Earth. Okay, and there's another term that people use called Earth centered, Earth fixed. So it rotates around the gravitational center. That is the center of gravity. So that is really the rotate around. Okay, and the Earth center, Earth fixed, I'm not sure if it fits along the datum or not. Okay? So they measure from the Earth's center of mass. Okay, the center of gravity, the center of mass. That is really where you measure from. So for the GPS, the GNSS receiver, when you're measuring XY, latitude and longitude is from that center. So when we work with the BlueGS84, we're working from this center. So anyway, just the thinking is that when we deal with GPS and GNSS or whatever, we are measuring from the center of mass of the Earth. Then it brings to this complicated picture. So, assuming that the middle is the BlueGS84, in other words, when you stand here, take a GPS reading, it gives you a coordinate. That coordinate will put you here using the Tokyo datum. So you here, use the Indian datum. Use the English Ordnance Survey, I'll put you here. You use the European datum, I'll put you here. So you could be, depending on the projection and the datum that the different projections use, you could be up to a kilometer, less than a kilometer off, if you do the same position to somebody else. Okay? And their machine is using a different datum. So I think you're probably close to this Pokemon, right? How many points to 100 meters off, 80 to 100 meters from the BlueGS84. I mean, from the chart anyway. Right? So what this was trying to show you is because we talked about the datum earlier, and the different ellipsoids that different countries use. So these are all different datums. So given this longitude, 97, 44, 25, 19 west, and this latitude, 30, 16, 28, 82 north. Okay? If you obtain the UTM coordinate for that, using the BlueGS84, it would tell you this middle of the star is where you should be. This is the XY plot. If I take the same lat long and I plug it into the Cape, so the Cape and the arc 50 are very close together. And then if you use the European datum, 1950, it will give you an XY over here. And so on. If you use the different datums, you will get different XYs. So what it means, and I've run into this in my work, is if somebody gives you a digital vector map of, say, a community, and they don't tell you what they use, maybe they use one of these, but they say, here's the UTM for the zone, this is the map, the vector map, I take the vector map. Say they gave me their datum, they were using Ordnance Survey, okay? I have my map in the BlueGS84. I will see that my corner, say this is my building here, I have a corner. I will find that the building, the same building they have would have this as the corner. So the whole map is shifted. Yeah, it's shifted by about, all the roads don't line up by about 500 meters off. Now in the Philippines, when I was working in the Philippines, it's quite common to have something 300 meters off because they were using one, they didn't, and I was using another. Okay? So put the maps together. I would not be surprised if in your work you run into something similar. When you put two maps together and you do not know the metadata, which is the people didn't tell you what they used to create the vector map. You put it on top of your map, they don't fit. So this is really kind of important. If you want your maps and you're building layers and layers of information that you want to use and share, then you can't have one layer off this way, another layer off that way. Okay? You need to line up all the maps so that it makes sense, the coverage. So when the government takes information from outside, say from a mining company, and you don't know what they use, you bring it in, or another consulting company, an environmental NGO, to bring the maps together, it should cover the same site, but you suddenly find they're all over the place. So if it's not very poor work, assuming that they did good work, then the chances are they have a different data or projection that they're using. So one thing as a group or as government people here, if you are actually hiring consultants to do your work, you have to insist that they give you the entire background information, the metadata for the work, so that you can be sure if there is any errors, what is causing the error. And it's important when you do your work that you have a standard. So historically, like in Mongolia, you have two issues, two standards, right? You have the old standard, which is your Gauss-Kruger, and then you have your current government, which is, at least I would say it's very good that your government has standardized on WGS 84. So at least now, you have a standard, which is WGS 84, so the issue is now to bring the old maps and old data to WGS 84. Okay, I'll give you a couple of things just as discussion ideas. When I was in Pakistan, I was working for the National Institute of Health in Pakistan. And I was staying in a very nice hotel, the Serena Hotel. It's a beautiful hotel on top of a hill with a nice pool. And I had my single-phase GPS receiver with me, and I always like to do experimenting. So I decided I had Google Earth, and Google Earth had a very sharp, high-resolution image of the swimming pool. I have the swimming pool, so I said, okay, I can collect my GPS reading, and then I compare it to Google Earth. So to those of you that was attending the GNSS workshop earlier, I did a PPP on my data collected by the swimming pool. So that's a precision point position. So I sent it off on the website, got the coordinates back, and then I go look at Google Earth, and I was 17 meters difference between my reading and Google Earth. So there's a danger here for you, just flagging that if you digitize using Google Earth without checking, you could have, I would say you could have up to 30 meters off. So anybody here, if they're paying attention, why 30 meters plus or minus? Anybody here tell me? Why could you be 30 meters off? Okay, if you recall, the Landsat images at 30 meters, remember Landsat 7, they did the auto rectification with SRTM, which is SRTM. So the Google Earth was corrected to 30 meters with the Space Shuttle program, the 3D. So it's auto rectified. So Google Earth is good to plus or minus 30. In some cases, if you remember also the panchromatic, the 15 meters black and white. So they enhanced the 30 meters with the 15-meter panchromatic, so we can actually, it looks like we have 15-meter pixels, but we really only have 30 meters, but it's enhanced to 15 meters. So simulate at 15 meters, okay? Color, yeah? So just so you know, so the whole Earth, so Google has this entire Earth pretty good to 30, 15 meters. In the case where, in Pakistan, where they have extra good image from satellite, of my hotel and the pool, they did not register that image. They just used the base image to line up the good image. Okay? So that means that you could be a little off because they're taking a high-res image, they overlay it on a low-res image, and they eyeball, they try to fit the roads. Okay, so basically an operator, not a geodesist or a scientist, an operator took the high-res image over the low-res image and said, okay, this is a good fit, I'll let it go. Okay? That's how they did it. So they could be easily 15, 17 meters off. Okay? Because they're looking at a 15, 30 meter pixel to line up roads. And okay, I'll take this and then move it on to Philippines. Now I was working for a municipality, the planning department. Inside the planning department in this municipality, local government, and they're digitizing all the roads using Google Earth. So they said, okay, I said, okay, it's very interesting. I said, could you use your GPS to verify? I said, no, GPS is no good because the Google Earth is a different location and the Google Earth is sharp and it's accurate, so the GPS is no good. So anyway, so this is the problem, huh? So people actually looking at Google Earth, assuming that Google Earth is accurate and precise. So if Google Earth is different than the GPS, they say Google Earth is sharp, I can see where the building is, and so GPS must be wrong. So it took me a little time to persuade them that GPS is right, Google Earth is wrong. But anyway, you have to understand that handheld is plus or minus, right? But in reality, though, do not just assume because Google Earth shows you a very sharp image that Google Earth is accurately registered. Just because it's sharp image does not mean that it is accurately registered. Depending on the work you do, I can show you ways of actually fixing it. So you can actually use the Google Earth image, move it over to a more accurate position, and still use it to digitize. Back to the beginning. So in the beginning, we said that the Earth is a certain shape. This is real ground. This is the ellipsoid, our approximation of the Earth. Okay? So actually, when you take a reading of the GPS, it gives you this height, the ground height. Okay? So you need to add your elevation. However, there's also the geoid. The geoid is your mean sea level. As I was saying, the Earth, now we don't work a lot in elevations and it is kind of complex, but the geoid is meant to define the gravitational level of water at the mean sea level. That's gravitation. The estimated gravitational location of mean sea level. The geoid elevation, the geoid height is where the water will be at zero at the moon. It's a little complicated to explain, but okay, if you take the Earth, first of all, it's not round, it's not ellipsoidal, it's kind of bumpy. Okay? And the satellites fly around the gravitational center, which is in the middle. But inside the Earth, down below us, it is not homogeneous. It is not homogeneous. It's not all one mass. For example, below the ground in some parts of Mongolia, you have gold. We know gold is denser than, say, copper. Okay? So, if you have gold over here, you have copper over here, you have oil over here, these are all different densities. So what it means is as you go into the magma of the Earth, okay, inside the core of the Earth, there are some heavier blobs over here, like my liver, heavier over here, kidneys over here, so there's different densities around the Earth, inside. And because of that, then the gravitational pull in different parts of the Earth is slightly different. And that's why the geoid actually fluctuates. In the ocean, it's not perfectly flat. It goes down because the gravity is higher, and because the gravity is less, so the water level is higher. Unlike the geodesy people there, you have basic gravitometers, okay? So in Mongolia, people run around Mongolia measuring the gravity in different places in Mongolia, come up with a geoid surface in Mongolia. And usually the geoid model for Mongolia would be some kind of network grid that is mathematically computed. So depending on where you are, you can calculate where the geoid surface is. Okay? And that is really represents the zero mean sea level of the Baltic Ocean, is where you have defined, your government has decided that is what we call zero. So zero is if all the water flowed to the Baltic, this would be where it is the mean sea level in the Baltic. So in Canada, zero may be different. They might pick the Great Lakes, or they might pick the East Coast or the West Coast for our zero time. Anyway, so just so you know, then the information, the geoid is not flat, it's not a straight, it's fluctuating to gravity. So it's important for, say, the water resource people because water flows downhill. So when you do contour maps, you know, the engineer or the irrigation engineer needs to know, water resource engineer needs to know that's zero. And at 10 meters, so water is go from 10 meters to zero. Okay, so the engineer, you know, the irrigation engineer or the water resource engineer needs to know where zero is, because if they're standing at 10 meters, they know that from 10 meters you go downhill to zero. Okay? You can't build a canal to flow uphill, so it has to go downhill. Water will not flow uphill. Okay, so this is, it's not that critical, but if you look at topographic maps that the government produces, the chances are you should go from the higher elevation to the lower elevation for water flow. That's important to basically drainage and flow of water. Other than that, the geoid model has no significance to the rest of us. You have to walk up the mountain and down the mountain. Okay, so that's it for this session today. Thank you.